So this presentation is about communication, specifically in groups and teams. This is Human Communications 203, and I'm presenting for Week 7 project. So in the business world, there's a lot of opportunity for people to be participative in groups, specifically in teams, which you're going to find out are different. Groups and teams are specifically different. But throughout my career, I've had a lot of opportunity to be in both, and certainly can see the advantage of going through a communication class like this to understand what maybe some of the advantages and disadvantages of being in a group really are. So what is a group? So a group is 3 or more people who interact over a period of time, who depend on each other and follow rules of conduct, all towards a common goal. Okay. What is a team? So a team is more specialized. They're more specialized. They have different kind of characteristics. They're complementary of each other, and they all are working towards one common identity. So a team is a group, but a group isn't necessarily a team. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So these are some types of teams and groups that you'll specifically be engaging in the workplace. So a project team, this is probably the most common type of team you're going to experience. It's a multifunctional team working towards a common goal. That's my dog Thor upstairs, if it's in the video. So a project team, I was part of an operation that we were moving a product from one building to another. Some of the multi-functional groups that participated was science and technology, quality, regulatory, engineering, and operations. So all those functions come together toward one common goal to move the product. A focus group. So this is more seen in advertisers and marketing firms. So focus groups come together to gather data, specifically maybe on a product, on how well a product might be doing or may do in the marketplace. There's brainstorming groups. So this is obviously, just as it's stated, is to capture any ideas that you can come up with as a group. And the idea is not to evaluate any of those ideas, to document those, and then don't criticize any of the ideas that are coming. Any idea is a good idea, and they'll be evaluated later on at some given time. Advisory group. So this is more of a group that usually is around a higher level decision maker, such as a director, vice president, or CEO. They do just that. They give advice based on their expertise in their field, which could be quality, regulatory, science and technology, manufacturing, etc. And then quality improvement teams, these are usually supported by upper management as well. And those are to specifically focus on an area that you might have an issue with in your manufacturing. If you have a manufacturing department, you may be having quality issues, product not meeting specification. And so these teams are set out to target to not have product fail and then ship product on time. Decision-making group, I was part of one of these as well, which was to generate policy for the corporation. So in this instance, I had the benefit to rewrite the attendance policy for the corporation. So obviously the team has to be all one. There's not one decision maker. It's everybody that's adding to that endeavor. So those are some examples of teams and groups. Some features of small groups. So there's, as I said, there's advantages and disadvantages of small groups. Social loafing. Anyone know what that is? Might have a stat at that? Maybe? What do you think, Zoe?
I learned about it in psychology, but something that I think it's bad.
Social loafing is when somebody is maybe doing less work than what the would have done as an individual, right?
That's productive,
there's 4 or 5 people. The work's getting done. They pretty much don't have to do anything. They're not interacting. They're not engaged. They just sit there and let the team kind of do it for them. An advantage of a small group would be having synergies, right? So these are collaboration that enhances energies, talents, and strengths of individuals, makes them better, and so that's obviously an advantage for a team. And then with teams comes cohesion, right? So coming together to make a cohesive group. But that also could be a negative thing, right? So too much cohesion creates groupthink. Does anybody know what groupthink is? Does anybody know what that is?
Isn't it like when you just follow what one person thinks?
Right. So
Instead of
yep.
all, yeah.
So what happens is everybody starts liking everybody's ideas, and they're such a cohesive group that they're just like they never question anything. They never challenge it.
Yeah.
They always just whatever we come up with, that's got to be right because that's what we've known so far, right? So that's one part or one feature, I guess, of a small group. Group size certainly matters. Whether you're a group of 3, whether you're a group of 10, there's a lot of things that come into play with the size of the group, including power structure. So as many of you know, when you're in teams and groups, there's different types of power that can be prevailed throughout that course over time. So there's reward power, coercive power. So this is like, if I was the boss and I'm in the meeting, and a lot of times I am in a group of team members, and a lot of times people just look at me because I have the authority to hire, fire, promote people, and so a lot of times they'll just look at me for that type of decision-making ability within a team. It's not a good thing, and so there's legitimate power. So these can be kind of intertwined here. But then you have expert power, which is the influence derived from expert knowledge or experience. So maybe a subject matter expert in their field. It would be like if you're a biology major or you are a microbiologist, we would refer to you as having expert power. You don't have any authoritative power, but you have power of knowledge. And then referent power, which is influence based on personal charisma and personality. We all know people like that. They're naturally very charismatic and have a great personality, and they sometimes take over meetings in groups and teams. So you got to be cognizant of that, that they can do that, and then bring them back in. So there's really 2 different methods of group decision making I'd like to go over. One is a standard agenda. And so in a standard agenda, you would define a problem, gather information and or evidence, establish criteria, rules around what you're trying to accomplish, generate and evaluate any possible solutions, and then select the best solution to the problem, and then monitor the decision. And the other type is a nominal group technique, which is less seen, I think, than the standard, which is an introduction of the problem, an explanation, silent generation of ideas, and then sharing of those ideas, and then there's a discussion afterwards about those ideas, and then you actually vote and rank the ideas. So I don't see this very often in my line of work, but I'm sure in some places it makes sense. So guidelines when you're in these teams and groups, guidelines for communicating. The first 3 are more positive: task communication, procedural communication, climate communication, and then the bad one, egocentric communication. We're going to go over kind of what some of those examples are. So task communication. This is seeking information, giving information, elaborating on ideas. Procedural communication. This is more of the logistics of the meeting or of the team. So you're establishing an agenda. You have an orientation. You're potentially, curbing digressions. That's like water cooler talk or sidebar conversations within a meeting. You want everybody to be engaged and focused in on the problem at hand. And if that's not happening, you need to have procedural communication to say, hey, let's bring it back. Let's focus on the task at hand. Recording any ideas that come out, summarizing, and then putting records in progress out for everybody to see afterwards. And then climate, this is more cultural. So, make sure it's very positive, harmonize ideas, recognize others, reconciles conflicts, builds enthusiasm. So keeping it upbeat and positive is more of the cultural part of the communication amongst the team and the group. And then the bad one, which is egocentric communication. You never want to see anybody being aggressive towards somebody that blocks ideas, just shuns them away, seeking personal recognition or bragging, dominates interaction or aggressiveness, pleads for their own special interests, right? So not a good way to communicate in a group is being very egocentrical. So within a team, in a group, you're gonna inevitably have conflict, right? So you need leadership, right? So naturally, what I've seen is that leadership usually, comes to the top. Leaders are leaders; they're born leaders, and they'll come and they'll set, they'll kind of set the tone, if you will, and kind of, some people aren't naturally born leaders, so maybe they won't take that responsibility. But usually, what I see is that there's some level of leadership within the groups and teams that forms. There's disruptive conflict, which is a disagreement characterized by competitive communication, self-interest, and win-lose orientation. So that means is, obviously they're looking out for their own best interest. And then constructive conflict, disagreement that is characterized by respect for diverse opinions, emphasis on shared interests and goals. So that's the good type of conflict. And that's it. Questions?
So you prefer a team or a group of yous working in, what would you prefer to work in?
I like both. I've been in both. I've been part of teams and groups. I think they have their own advantages, depending on what specifically you're looking to do. Whether it's a brainstorming session, brainstorming group, we do that a lot. And I've been part of project teams, which are also very, very useful. So it depends on what you're trying to do.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.